Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Unversed podcast. Danny here. Today we are talking about Ningyo no Kuni. That is the Japanese name for this manga. I believe it's the more popular name of this manga because I do not know how to pronounce the other one. It is like a possum, I believe. It'll be on the title of the episode for you guys on that. A little hesitant to read this one for the reviews because there was only 21 chapters, right? But after reading it, checking it out, I was like, oh no, I definitely want to keep reading this. I am very interested into what is going on, mainly because the first big thing that caught my eye for this was, wow, I'm really getting some Fire Punch vibes out of this, right? As far as the world, the world build up and characters and kind of like the setting overall, and another big thing for me was the art style, right? The art style for this is really nice. To describe it, I guess it's stencil like. What I mean is it's very light on the lines for like everything, characters and buildings, backgrounds. And the lines don't all connect with each other, right? There's little gaps in between. That's where I feel like there's a stencil sketch kind of feel to it. And for a long time, there was no black being used, right? It was just a lot of shading and white, and that really gave this refreshing feel to it, you know? And even like alongside the darkest color were just those little transparent shading sheets that mangakas use, right? They'll lay it over the page, and then they'll use an X-Acto knife to cut right exactly where they're gonna shade, and then they, you know, tape it on there, scan the page, whatever they do. But that's as dark as it goes, like a very, like not even a very dark gray, sort of like a mid dark gray, right? And man, like this, like the spread shots of some characters, it just really looks nice because, like, yeah, again, the lines aren't connecting, so it always feels incomplete in a sense, but I think that's the refreshing part of it. And then eventually at a certain point, a main character, a new main character shows up, and her hair's black. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, you know, we find out where she's from, and basically where she's from, everybody else has black hair. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This is a turning point in the direction of the, not really the direction of the manga, but more of what our main characters are about, you know, as far as what they're doing and their mission. And another reason why I say it's very similar to Fire Punch is because it's really similar in the beginning for Fire Punch, right? We have our main character. He does, you know, he ends up doing something by accident, or well, he has to do something because he has no choice if he wants the people he's with at the moment to live, right? They're just traveling for food, and then they see some guards or whatever, and this they were shooting at this girl, and she was like, no, please take these. And basically his teammates were gonna die, and he's the best sharpshooter in their village, so he took out all the guards. And they were getting ready to actually leave to run from the empire, I believe is what they called them, the government basically. And it was too late. They're all there. Everybody gets massacred, and he essentially dies. But then our other main character shows up, saves him, and then now he's basically, in a sense, on a revenge path, as well as like justice and what he has to do for the world, right? He's helping this this other character, Tatiana, I believe it's called. So that's where it's similar, where, you know, everybody he cares about dies, he gets new powers, and he just wants revenge. And I was like, cool. Another thing I like too is with the art style, in a sense, does remind me of Dorohedoro. If you guys haven't read that, it's in a sense it feels like the inverse, where it was Dorohedoro has like that rough sketch with like the bleak tones. Here we more have a lighter sense and, very light on the illustrations. So that's I think a good refresher. Man, it is a interesting manga. The World, right? Apazum, if I'm pronouncing that right, is the name of the place they're at, which I don't believe is Earth. I think it is I guess it's like a station that landed on a planet a long time ago that's now covered in snow, is no longer functional, and basically people live on the surface, and it's just always snowing. So of course a main resource is hot water, right? And basically where these people live, there are pipes funneling through their homes and all that for the hot water. And there is just the empire, the government, whatever they're called in here again, and a bunch of other interesting stuff, man. Like there's these weird creatures that they have to fight that live the deeper that you go into the I guess like this ship or whatever they're living on top of, the more creatures are there, and they're really there to as a defense for people trying to get in, because there's this central core that's sort of keeping everything in place and check, right? If that goes, like, the whole world's fucked. And I think it's the Empire that wants to take control of that power, right, for themselves or something. But it's like, but if they go down there, everything's screwed. So our main character has to go and stop it. So that's the main reason why he's going. And what's like the most interesting thing is what happens on this world, right? They call it frame disease, and basically what happens is your body slowly gets replaced with, I guess, like mechanical parts, and then you become more doll-like. And I think that's where the art really shines for me, is like the way he draws them, and again with the stencil-like thing going on, it is very visually amazing. But if you, what's it called? So yeah, you look like frames, and eventually when it takes over your whole body, you lose control of your free will in a sense. You're just like zombified. You're not really doing anything. You like, we see a pack of them very early on, of all these people with frame disease, and they're kind of just huddled together, not really doing much, or they're migrating, and they just lose their sense of self. And I was like, wow, this is some really interesting things that are happening in this world. And when our main character, he gets attacked by this person, by one of these Imperial Guards or whatever, Imperial Guard uses like the power of ice, and he shoots him right in the head, right? So he gets hit in the eye, and then our little main character, Titiana, I believe is how you pronounce it again. She is what they call a, what was it, like a regular, like frame, I guess. And basically what that is there's like this, like liquid or whatever that you inject into the person, and depending on their ratio compatibility to it, they gain these powers where their body does become frame-like, and they gain abilities, and they're able to equip armor, regenerate, but it's interesting. And I guess they don't age either, is also another thing, because we see one of the people from the first village, from our main character, is like over 300 years old. So that's also an interesting aspect to what's going on. And so our main character turns into that, and he gains the ability to transform his arm into a gun. And since he's, I guess because he's a good sharpshooter, so that makes sense for him. And he was the one holding on to these these items that the girl that died in the first chapter had, which basically are these super powerful bullets that are powerful enough to penetrate the barriers to get to the central core. And I believe he only has like 7 initially. And the main goal is to make sure the Empire doesn't get these. And pretty much all he does is travel and defeats other regular frames. And he absorbs, like, I guess, like, in a sense, their chakra, right? Pretty much the thing that holds the high particles that they consume for healing and for their abilities. And because, like, it's like, oh, you have a set amount, but if you do defeat people and you absorb their whatever it is they have to hold the high particles, then you will be able to increase your limit, basically. So you're leveling up in a sense. And that is what our main character is doing, really. He's just traveling and defeating frames one by one, slowly getting stronger. And what is interesting is the what's it called? The way the characters fight, or the way our main character fights. It's interesting because we don't really get him training or anything. It's sort of just really him just going on and just slowly one by one taking these people out, but we don't really get a good fight scene until way later down the line when he starts attacking like high ranking frames. And even then, like, the fighting, what's it called? Shoot, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought real quick. Yeah, the fights with these high rankers, they're not really that long either, which I thought was interesting. Sometimes they go a little too fast, and it's also one of those things where he just got these powers not that long ago, and sure, we don't really get a sense of how long time has passed, but still, yeah, like, we don't know how skilled he was initially. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like, oh yeah, he's a good sharpshooter. And, just the way he fights and all this, I was like, okay, like, I kind of wanted to see more, you know, of him build, in a sense, like, not essentially a training arc, but more essentially a moment to really reflect on his skills and what he's learned along the way. He does have some interesting setups, some traps, clever techniques that he uses when he fights these people. And yeah, really, like, some of the fights, they either last a while like everybody's getting injured and, you know, they're all resting trying to heal, and then others is just like, boom, headshot, it's over type of deal, right? It's like, ha, I got you, and then it's like, wait, what? Boom, he's dead. Our main character levels up essentially and just moves forward. So yeah, there's a sort of balance it has, but I really wish it got into more depth about that itself. So, still pretty good stuff though. But man, like, the last few chapters I read, I was like, man, things are really picking up pace. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. I was like, wow, this is going a little too fast, but, I'm keeping up. You know, it's not like Black Clover speed of being fast, right? So, we also get this other character, and she is pretty much there to stop everything that's going on, and our main character is supposed to help her. And you do get a sense of romance, but that's not like until they reach her village, right? There's really no, like, sure, there's some journey stuff, but there's really no development between them when they're by themselves. It's not until later, which I thought was interesting, I guess. But maybe it's just because that's the way. The interesting thing is, one interesting thing was, yeah, that they're frames, right? So they are no longer human, right? So they don't have to do as much as humans do, right? For example, they don't need oxygen, right? That's the thing, is you need oxygen tanks to, I guess, travel on the surface, and they don't really need to rest as much. They don't need to eat as much, right? Because basically, when they eat, they absorb the high particles in the food they consume, and then that's how much they store, and so they don't really eat. They don't really need to eat any more than what they need to store, right? In a sense, a very robot mentality. But because our main character just turned into a frame, and he still feels human, right? And plus he's still going on for this revenge mission. So this female was like, oh, why is he doing this and that? It's strange. You know, why do we have to camp? Why is he eating or sleeping this much? And it's just like, oh, yeah, because he still has some humanity left with him, which is what makes him interesting from her perspective, I guess. And I was very surprised that there was one humorous scene between them, which was pretty good. That was funny. And then we also get scopes about, you know, the living conditions in this world and basically the status that these Imperials have across everybody. And it really feels like, oh yeah, this is basically a FU government. You know, you've had your fun for too long. It's time for us to really do things that are right, essentially. So that's pretty interesting stuff. Again, it's only 21 chapters right now. It looked like it was monthly. And again, yeah, the art's just amazing. Some of the designs that they have for the armor is really great. I think that's the main attraction for this is like how cool the armor looks, especially with the art style. And I definitely recommend it. You know, it's a good read. There's definitely a lot of dialogue to go through. And other than that, I think that's all I have to say. Again, I just wish there was more right now. That's why I was kind of hesitant to reading it initially. I'm like, well, I could just let it build up. But no, I'm glad I read it now and can't wait for those new chapters. Hopefully there's one this month. The last chapter was November. So we'll see where that goes, guys. And the next one I am reading is City Hunter. It looks interesting. It's my kind of aesthetic, old Jump manga. Also the main reason is because Ryo, the main character, is in Jump Force. And just like when J-Stars came out, you know, when J-Stars dropped, I was like, oh, look at all these characters. Where are they from? Let's read their mangas. And that's essentially what I'm doing here. I think City Hunter is the only one I need to read so far with the current roster. So, excited to read that. It looks really good. So, yeah, while we wait for that, guys, remember you can always email us at unversedpodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns. And you can follow us on social media at Unversed Podcast. Anywhere you go, stay updated when we drop some episodes. And, you know, swing by over onto Marvel Talk. Of course, we'll be having some episodes up coming soon, so be on the lookout for that. And thank you for listening as always, guys, and we will talk to you next time.